We are well into December now, and so I see that a lot of other crypto YouTubers or crypto tubers out there are making their kind of top picks for 2018, whichever cryptocurrencies they believe have the greatest potential in terms of growth and profits for many of us to invest in. And so I very much want to jump on this bandwagon as well and offer my kind of general thoughts on this, and so that's what I'm going to do in this video today. I've chosen to go with the top 3 picks for 2018 rather than just a top 5 or a top 10. I could have gone down that route, but thinking about it, if I am being honest, there are only really 3 that I am completely passionate and incredibly excited about. A few more others are kind of, I think they're going to do well, the likes of, I don't know, Litecoin, Dash, whatever else. But this 3 that I'm going to feature in today's video, I am extremely excited about. For many of my regular viewers, there aren't going to be any surprises in this video at all. It's the usual suspects are going to come in, but I still recommend you kind of stick to this video anyway, because I'm going to be talking a lot about 2018 in particular, which I haven't done so much in other videos, so I still think there'll be value for you guys to watch this. And as with all of these kinds of videos, do just bear in mind that this isn't intended to be construed as financial advice in any way. I'm just sharing my own very personal, unprofessional opinions. All cryptocurrencies are incredibly risky, so just do bear that in mind at all times. And so we're going to start with my number 3 pick for 2018, and that is going to be IOTA. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about what IOTA is. If you don't know much about it, if that's a name that you're not really familiar with at all, then I do have another video where I actually reviewed IOTA. It's just called IOTA Cryptocurrency Review. So I'll leave a link for you to watch that video at the end of this one. And I know this is going to sound incredibly extreme, but I really do mean this when I say this. It's my personal opinion, again, just remember that, just opinion, that IOTA could be either the worst or very best investment that you could make in the whole of 2018. The reason I say that is because its current valuation of around about $7 billion is based on the successful implementation of an unbelievably brilliant idea. What's that idea? A decentralized cryptocurrency that actually becomes much more faster and more secure the larger the entire network gets, and that has 0 transaction fees. This will potentially allow it to form the backbone of the Internet of Things economy. That is absolutely massive, and if we're talking about, in terms of potential market caps, if they were to pull this off, then I can't help but feel like it would be worth at least the value of Bitcoin in this kind of current, very slow, expensive state, which is valued at around, $190 billion right now, I think. So from the kind of $7 billion-ish that we're at right now, that is the potential for unbelievable growth. That's why I would consider it to be potentially the very best investment that you can make this year with cryptocurrencies. But there is a massive kind of however attached to that. And that's that this idea is very much still hypothetical, which is why it could actually be one of the worst investment decisions you make as well. IOTA's current valuation of around $7 billion is absolutely enormous. It is absolutely sky high right now, when you consider that it still very much depends on the use of a centralized coordinator in order to guarantee the security of the protocol. In the eyes of many people out there, IOTA can't even be considered to be a decentralized currency until the day where it finally does away with a coordinator altogether. This might be incredibly harsh and unfair, but just as a good kind of analogy to paint a picture in your minds, betting on IOTA right now with the use of a coordinator is kind of like betting on a cyclist to win the Tour de France when they're still using stabilizers on their bike. But again, once they demonstrate that they actually can be a secure, kind of fully functioning network without the use of that coordinator, and I do believe that might potentially occur at some point in 2018, then at that point there is absolutely tremendous potential for growth. I think there are some minor improvements or developments that are going to be made in 2018 which will have a pretty positive effect on the price of IOTA as well. I think once we actually have a user-friendly desktop wallet for people to use that doesn't require people to attach to the Tangle and which doesn't involve them having to see 0 balances on their wallet, which gives many people a kind of minor heart attack, those kind of things will do wonders for the price. And if IOTA manages to stay in the kind of top 5 to 10 of all coins out there, then eventually, and again at some point in 2018 in all likelihood, they're going to get hardware wallet support at some point from the likes of Trezor and the Ledger Nano S as well, which again is absolutely huge because I know that so many people out there don't feel comfortable storing large amounts of cryptocurrencies if they can't use something very safe and reliable like a hardware wallet. I'm sure more exchanges are going to start dealing with it and offering it as well. I know that people in America in particular, everyone in the US, they've had problems with Bitfinex. They've been essentially barred from using that exchange altogether, and so I think that's pretty much the main exchange or marketplace for IOTA right now. And so once we have many, many more options for everyone around the world, that's only going to do good things for the price. And I'm also going to leave you with a link to a website that is tracking all publicly announced IOTA real world projects. They've got some big names on there. It's really exciting. Check that out and you'll feel bullish, I'm sure. And so it's for all of those reasons that I consider IOTA to be my own personal kind of moonshot pick for 2018. I think it's far, far too risky to even consider kind of betting the farm on IOTA in the same way that people have done for Bitcoin and Ethereum. I think it still has to prove itself in many ways before it would even be remotely deserving of that kind of risk, not to even say that Bitcoin or Ethereum are. But I do believe there is great potential for, good profits out there. At the end of the day, you could either lose 100% of all the money you put in, but there's also the chance that I think with IOTA you could make 1,000% returns on your money. So you just have to kind of weigh that risk reward ratio up. Moving on to my number 2 choice of cryptocurrencies for 2018, we have Bitcoin. And if I were to characterize Bitcoin in the same way that I just characterized IOTA as my kind of moonshot pick for 2018, I would have to call Bitcoin the kind of safe choice for this year. Because even though Bitcoin is absolutely fraught with problems right now, where you have incredibly expensive and slow transactions going on, and you've had absolute bitterness and division and animosity within the Bitcoin community for a very, very long time now. Despite all those things, Bitcoin has a way of just keep marching on, and the market cap just keeps increasing, and the value of individual Bitcoins keep increasing as well. It's called the honey badger of money for a reason, and that's because everyone who ever bets against Bitcoin or tries to destroy it ends up failing miserably. And so I see absolutely no reason at all why that won't continue to be the case in 2018 as well. Especially, absolutely especially, with all the increasing mainstream awareness and adoption that we're starting to see. I'm seeing Coinbase trending on the App Store, and I'm seeing stories about Bitcoin trending on my personal Facebook pages. And just anecdotally speaking as well, I'm at the point now where I'm getting so many neighbors, relatives asking me about my kind of Bitcoin investments, and it's really important to note that they're never actually asking me about my cryptocurrencies or about my Ethereum or about my IOTA or anything else. It's always just, how's your Bitcoin doing? Which again, in terms of potential increases in price for Bitcoin in 2018 is absolutely huge, because it demonstrates that even when you have literally thousands of cryptocurrencies on offer to people, Bitcoin is still completely dominating when it comes to branding for everyday average people. On top of that, there's the potential for further scaling developments as well. You never know, we might actually see the Lightning Network released at some point in 2018, although I do probably think in all likelihood we might see that at the beginning of 2019 instead. But that's not so much of a big deal to me, because I actually think that today's valuation of Bitcoin right now isn't totally contingent or dependent on many of these kind of future developments that we're all hoping for. I think Bitcoin derives much of its value right now from just being a censorship-resistant storage of value. I think that in itself is absolutely enormously valuable to the entire world, and especially if we do see some kind of world recession or some kind of world economic problems for many countries out there, then there's the potential for Bitcoin value to just keep absolutely skyrocketing. And so if there are further delays for Bitcoin in terms of, scalability, I don't think it's the end of the world. But if those things actually do go well, then again, it's just even more reason for Bitcoin to continue to keep going up in price. I know that there are talks right now of Bitcoin being in a bubble, never mind in 2018 when we get more kind of normal people involved. And I know people are concerned about the CME futures and stuff like that, and NASDAQ. And yeah, it might lead to some kind of enormous bubble that pops horrendously at some point in 2018, but what can you do? That's just the way that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies have always kind of developed. It's always boom, bust, or bubble cycles or whatever. But again, Bitcoin always has a funny way of just bouncing back and keep marching onwards. And I know there's questions about how Bitcoin Cash might affect all of this as well, whether it's going to eventually oust Bitcoin and become the Bitcoin, if you want to call it that. But even if Bitcoin Cash does rise enormously in value this year, I still think BTC is going to do extremely well, just because you're going to have Wall Street investment and because BTC still has such branding dominance in the eyes of everyday average Joes. I can't help but be extremely, extremely bullish about Bitcoin on the whole, even though I think we all know scaling is going to be painful and transactions are going to continue to probably be more expensive and slower in all likelihood. I still think Bitcoin is going to do well, you just can't rule it out. And then finally, my number 1 overall pick for 2018, Ethereum. If you regularly watch my videos, then you'll know that I'm an absolutely huge fan of Ethereum. I've had most of my money invested in it since the beginning of 2017 now has served me incredibly well so far, and many of you watching this, I know, and I am insanely bullish about what 2018 has in store for it as well. The main reason why I'm so bullish about Ethereum's prospects for 2018 and beyond actually is because there's very much a clear scaling roadmap in place that the entire community is agreed upon. There's kind of general consensus there. Throughout much of 2017, the Bitcoin community spent so much time arguing between themselves on Twitter, discussing the philosophy of Bitcoin and what Satoshi would make of the current situation today. And so many hours of engineers and core devs' time was spent on preparing for contentious hard forks like SegWit2x that never even happened. And so, on the whole, there was just so much time wasted on silly things when all those time and efforts and resources could have actually been devoted to the tech itself. But with Ethereum, because there's been general consensus on which direction the entire Ethereum community wants to take, we've been able to focus all of our time on just the tech alone and how we can make Ethereum scalable to serve a worldwide audience of billions of people. So for much of 2017, we've had the groundwork laid down for scaling solutions like Raiden, Plasma. We've had countless ICOs raise funds to build great things on the platform as well. And in 2018, we're going to start seeing all of these things come into fruition. We're going to have projects like Omise Go that utilize the Plasma technology. And of course, in the first or second quarter of 2018, we're going to have Constantinople as well, which is the kind of second half of the Metropolis upgrade. And it's going to introduce a small dimension or a hybrid of proof of stake consensus mechanism along with proof of work as well. So that's incredibly exciting. Then hopefully towards the end of 2018, there's a very realistic chance that we're going to see the highly anticipated Casper upgrade as well, where we fully transition to proof of stake as a way of securing the network. And it's at this point that Ethereum could attract significant institutional investment, as these investors can earn staking rewards from the ether that they own in the same way that they can earn dividends from the stocks that they own right now. Plus, on top of this, you've got all the continued investment and development from all of these enormous companies that are in the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. And I think the biggest factor of all, for me anyway, is the kind of positive or neutral reception that we've actually got from what can be called the establishment. There's always a lot of talk about governments wanting to ban Bitcoin because Bitcoin is perceived as this kind of rebellious libertarian project that's out to change the world and destroy governments and all that kind of stuff. And you just don't ever hear Ethereum spoken of in the same light as well. Rather than being painted as another kind of libertarian political cause, Ethereum is more thought of as just a politically neutral protocol or tech platform which actually large companies and banks and governments can benefit from using and investing in. Nowhere was this better illustrated in 2017 than when you had Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, one of the largest banks in the world, calling Bitcoin a scam and a fraud. All the meanwhile, JP Morgan itself is actually part of the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. And so when you have what many consider to be the establishment itself kind of getting involved and utilizing this specific technology, again, it's just really hard for me to see how this couldn't have an